Namaste and welcome to our Center for Indic Studies seminar series. We have a very exciting seminar presentation ahead. And just to set the stage a bit, we have been going through multiple revolutions in the area of information and knowledge gathering. So, for example, within less than a generation, before, let's say, the internet, information was key to power, prestige, money. Whoever had control of the information could use it for a variety of activities. And those who didn't had to pay or however had to get this. So then when the internet came, information became much more easily available, especially with the search engines. And now on your mobile phone, you can pretty much get whatever information you need. But the next revolution, which is a very, very recent revolution, is with very sophisticated chatbots. And for those of you who have used, for example, ChatGPT, which I have, just to give you a little background, I have been thinking and doing a little bit of study on a particular area of something that interests me for the last 10 years. And when GPT became operational, I just asked it, well, GPT, tell me, what do you know about this? And in 3 or 4 paragraphs, it pretty much distilled my 10 years of information and knowledge gathering. So the point being that these chatbots can, some people believe, open out the world even more and nothing else would remain. But we differ with that, and our speaker differs with that, in the sense that no matter what explosion we have in information and chatbots and whatnot, some basic questions, they can be answered only by ourselves. And his question is a very, very simple but very profound question, today's speaker's question: what is life? And our seminar has 2 titles: what is life and the equation of life. And they are both kind of synonymous. So to discuss this and give his thoughts, we have a speaker. We could not have a better speaker because BK Rai, Bharatendra Rai, he has his research expertise is in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and he has thought very deeply about mind, brain, cognition studies, and he comes with a wealth of knowledge in the Indic traditional knowledge system. So he has this rare ability to harmonize these 3 streams, if at all they are different. With that, let me introduce Professor BK Rai. He's a professor of business analytics in our Charlton College of Business. He's also the chairperson of Decision and Informational Sciences in CCB, as we call it. And with that, over to you, BK. We will have about 40 minutes or so of uninterrupted BK's presentation, during which I would request you all to mute yourselves, and then we will have a Q&A session. So with that, over to you, BK.
Thanks, Sukalyanda, for inviting me to talk about this topic. This is basically extension of a short talk that I gave to high school students just to motivate them. So Dr. Sukalyan Gupta asked me to expand on it and make this presentation for Center for Indic Studies. So here I am. This is a question that all of us wonder about at some point or the other. Who am I? If we ask this question to technology, usually it cannot answer, because it may think that we are trying to ask a question about what is my name or what is my designation, things like that. If we ask even people, so sometimes they may say this is me, but they are basically referring to body, some body parts, and not really who really they are. This is a very old question, but a very difficult one. And I try to provide my answers to this question in my own way. So my equation of life, it starts with this equation like I equals. So one part of ourself definitely is brain. Brain is basically like a house, or to be more specific, it is a semi-furnished house. We are given few things which we have no control on, and we get it. It consists of different parts. One of the major parts is this neocortex. The literal meaning of neocortex is this is a new outer layer of the brain. It started to form millions of years ago. So it's not something that came up just this year, and that's why we are calling this new. But it started to form millions of years ago. It basically surrounds this part that you see in the middle, which is called old brain. Somewhere towards the bottom, you see the spinal cord. This is especially neocortex is something that is only found in mammals. In humans, 75% of the brain is neocortex in terms of volume. Even a cat or a dog has neocortex. As humans, we are lucky that we have more of it compared to what other mammals have. It basically wraps around this old brain. If I divide certain things into two groups, so there is one group of activities that it is involved in is basically things that happen automatically. One example is breathing. We just breathe. We can breathe even when we are sleeping. But then there is second category of activities that we do. And one example related to breathing could be the breathing that we do in yoga. So we do controlled breathing. We are doing it ourselves. Many times what happens in the second category that I'm talking about, where we are doing something like we are learning to drive, for example, and we learn to drive. And after we have a lot of practice, those activities, they move to the first one where things start to happen automatically. It has happened to me many times. I'm sure it has happened to you also. So I'm driving back from, say, UMass Dartmouth, and my thoughts and all those things are going on. And boom, I'm at my home. And I realize what happened? I don't remember crossing that road or that signal. And so somebody just took over and automatically brought me home. It starts in the second category where we try to do things. And after sometimes those things start to move in the first category very often, and things start to happen automatically. But just like a house has many members in it, the members who are in the house, they make it a home. Just like that, brain is a house. It's the things that live inside that obviously are important. And one of the important members is neuron. People say neurons start to form during day 24 to 27 during pregnancy. When the child is about to be born, so around 24 to 27th day, neurons start to form. The key thing that neurons do is they process information. They process information and send to the next neurons. Now, these neurons, we have a lot of them actually. Approximately, people say about 100 billion neurons. Nowadays, with companies like Apple, is a $1 trillion market cap. Apple, Tesla, Microsoft, so many companies with trillion. So billion may look small. 100 billion may look a small number in a modern context. But just to get an idea, if you start counting and if you take about 1 second per number, it is going to take more than 30,000 years to count up to 100 billion. The key thing is that we have a lot of neurons in our brain. Now, what this brain does, one of the important activities that brain is involved in, it captures realities. What our eyes see, what our ears hear, how things look like, what people eat. So there are many type of realities or actual things that the brain captures through various tools it has. So it's like just looking at A and saying that this is A, this is B, and C. So that information can be captured by the brain. Now, the second important part is neural networks in action. What these neurons, what they do and how they act. So that's the second most important part in this equation. Let me also relate this to some of the things that we see today. In fact, for several decades, scientists and researchers, they have been trying to understand brain and how these neural networks interact and things like that, so that they can develop maybe artificial intelligence or machine learning models or deep learning models especially in the field of business, and benefit from that. AI, even some people say that we should not use the word intelligence in AI. There's no intelligence involved, but that's the term which is popular. There has been a lot of studies involving AI. I was reading a book, and it's a study done in 2012. Somebody developed like some kind of AI models. They collected a lot of data from Facebook likes. And what they discovered was with the 68 Facebook likes, one can develop models that can predict color of a skin with 95% accuracy. If we have data on just 10 likes, we can evaluate a person better than interviewing a coworker. And if we have data on about 70 likes, we can develop artificial intelligence model that can outperform friends who thought they knew about him or her. If you have data on 150 likes, your model can evaluate a person better than their parents. With 300 likes, you can uncover things that even the partner, wife or husband, they did not know about the other person. With more than 300 likes, the model can do better than what I know about myself. How I will behave in certain conditions or situations, even that can be outperformed. AI has become like quite hot. Definitely depends on a lot of data and a heavy use of technology. Anywhere you look, you see a lot of examples. And then we have a subset of that, which is a machine learning, where people, researchers, scientists, basically try to develop models that can learn by itself. Just like brain of a human being, the old brain or even the new brain that we get when we are born, I don't think so there is anything that tells us how to eat ice cream, but we are able to learn that very easily. People are working on machine learning models where machine is basically a computer. So machine can learn by itself when it reaches certain threshold with the whatever model it has developed, and then it can go on learning by itself and improving. Smaller subset of that is deep learning field, which directly relates to how the neural networks work. Basically, those methods that involve a lot of layers in the neural networks, that field is called deep learning. And especially nowadays, most of the applications of AI, they heavily use deep learning methods. So one example of that I can give is self-driving cars, which is trying to solve an important problem on Earth. We don't use our car 100% of the time. In fact, the data that we have, we use our car only about 4% of the time. 96% of the time, it is just idle. The whole purpose of going from place A to place B is that if I can get something immediately with technology, then probably I don't need a car. And especially if that car can drive by itself. So it can solve a lot of problems like congestion and pollution. So there's a lot of interest in that field, and companies like Tesla are focusing on that. But most of these methods like image recognition, understanding the context, basically draws heavily from neural network that we have inside our brain and how they act and behave. So these methods try to replicate that. For us, it's very easy. We see a car and we know that it's a car. We see an elephant, we know that it's an elephant. But training a neural network to do that takes some effort. Another example is language translation, and Google is a big company which does this. We can convert from any language to any other language. So many times, if you see a comment which is in some other language, you put it in Google and it will convert it into English in no time. This also uses a lot of deep learning applications. There has been a lot of interest in this field. You can see that by looking at the number of papers people publish and the growth that we see. Especially somewhere here around 2010, you can see growth in deep learning, machine learning kind of applications have exploded. When we try to create a model and we have like different layers of neurons where each neuron can connect with some other neuron. If you think inside the brain, we have 100 billion. On the screen, I have very few. If we try to connect every neuron to every other neuron and measure the length, how long our brain is, it will be about 20 kilometers long. So there's a saying in this field that neurons that fire together, wire together. When we are learning something, basically what is happening is the neurons are trying to make connections with each other. There's another saying, this is regarding neurons, use it or lose it. If we don't use enough of our neurons, sometimes we end up reducing the count. If I'm trying to learn driving, initially while driving on the freeway, if there will be a big truck passing next to me, I used to get very conscious, like I will hold the steering wheel very tight. And after some time, it becomes a habit and you don't care, like whoever passes by, not a big deal. But especially when we are learning, the neurons become very active, like they try to make new connections, new relationships, and basically create some kind of model. I was thinking, like when we say something, what does it mean in the sense of the way the neurons work? So for example, sometimes we tell people, I like you. So what exactly that means in terms of these neural networks? Basically, I like you, I feel is equal to that I like your neural networks. The way they are connected, I really like it. Probably that's what we mean by it. And what do we mean by thinking like outside of the box? Basically means, I guess, having a new neural network, making new connections. If we bring together the first two parts of this equation, probably we can call that as a mind. I mentioned that what brain does is it captures realities. What mind, which involves brain plus neural networks in action, it has a lot of permutations and combinations possible with 100 billion neurons trying to connect with each other. A lot of permutations and combinations of that, of the actual things. It in a way tries to capture some kind of possibilities that can happen. The example I gave was the brain is trying to capture reality in terms of recognizing that this is A or this is B or this is C. Our neural networks in action, along with the brain, it is trying to do all kinds of permutations and combinations like A times B or A square or AB C square and things like that. These possibilities with the mind that we have, it makes many things happen, like thinking. We are able to think about something. We are able to get some kind of impression based on something that we see or feel. We are able to generate some feelings. We are able to predict what is likely to happen. We are able to do a lot of interpretations based on our experience. Some people also say that this mind is a big prediction machine. It is involved in doing some kind of prediction all the time. For example, if I enter my office and suddenly I have a sense that something is different, I get a feeling that there is something, and then I start looking around. What exactly is that? And then I noticed that my 3 books that I kept on the left side of the table, somebody has put it on the right side. It took me like a few seconds to realize that, but the mind was able to somehow figure something and predict that something has changed and gave me some kind of uneasy or some kind of feeling that something is different here. It happened with me one time also. When I entered my car, I suddenly felt that something is strange here. And after a few seconds, I realized that this is not my car. So probably from outside, it looked exactly the same. And I was thinking something. I opened the door. Probably that person did not lock the car. And I was able to get in. And suddenly I see that, oh, I had a Ganesh Murti or something. And I don't see all that. And I see some Chinese things hanging. The brain plus the neural networks in action is able to predict all the time, and all the time it is misclassifying. If I hold a cup and next day I hold a cup and there's some difference in it, I will immediately notice. I'm not looking for it, but neural networks are always like doing that prediction. And if something strange happens, instead of square, if it is round, immediately I get the feedback. Apart from like a lot of things which this mind gets involved in, it also is a huge database of a lot of information that has occurred in the past, which has become our memories. I remember one example, IBM, it's a big technology company. In 1980, it created for the first time a hard disk which had a memory of 1 gigabyte. By today's standards, it's not a big deal, but at that time it was a big deal, 1 gigabyte. Its size was like a big refrigerator, and it weighed about 250 kilograms. And the cost was about $40,000. If you look at technology, we have come a long way. Nowadays, my phone has almost 500 gigabyte of memory. The brain and the neural networks, they store a lot of information, all the connections that they make. So when we think of memories, sometimes I wonder how exactly these memories are stored inside the brain. So we know that there are a lot of neural network models inside our brain, but how they get stored? What is the material they use? What is the structure that they use? Thinking about that, I remember when I was about maybe 5-6 years old, there's a city in India called Ambala. It's in Haryana. And my father was in army at that time. He was posted in Ambala. And one day we planned, okay, I need to learn to ride a bicycle. And he came with me. I was on the bicycle and he was behind me. And he pushed it. He said, I'm here and you can pedal and go on. And after going a few meters, I realized he's not there. And I fell down. That's how I think many of us learn bicycle. At least one time we fall down. And then after that, our biggest fear is gone and that's it. But when I remember that memory, even now, if I close my eyes and try to see like what was that scene, the mind, which is brain plus neural networks in action, it has stored that memory in some unique way. And it has very rough sketch of what that place was and what happened. I don't know about others, but at least for me, I don't remember seeing myself in that. But it is about me. I cannot see my face there, or I cannot see myself. But it doesn't feel like I was not there. I was definitely there. But what structure or material that has been used, I find that a bit strange. But the recollection of that old event, it is about 50 years back. So that recollection is very, very believable, very real. I can feel that this is exactly what happened. So although that is very believable, but things are in the memory very vague. This is one type of thing that the neural networks are involved in. Also, there are dreams that the neural networks get busy with in generating. In deep learning, we have this kind of neural network where we are able to generate new things. So basically, dreams do that inside the brain. The idea was basically borrowed from that in the deep learning. So I feel there's a connection between these two. Inside the dream, what material and structure is used is very similar to the style or form that we have in the memory. And another thing I have felt, we are not surprised by few things many times. We see strange things. We may be with strange people, which is never possible because at least memories are based on real activities, but dreams are artificial creations. But we never are surprised by even very strange kind of things happening. Even if you are having a cup of tea with 3 people and one of them is Einstein, somehow like we are not surprised. I have experienced that many times. But then there are times when, especially like bad dreams, where we are startled by something and we just wake up. Probably that's coming out of some neural networks in the old brain, which is like even before the neocortex. But the key thing is that things that happen in the dreams and the way we recollect memories, I see some kind of connection there. Now, the third part of this equation that makes us, which I feel is the secret recipe, which AI people who are trying to develop these kind of machines, they will never be able to have, is the attention, the way brain plus neural network and the way it interacts with the attention. So that's the last part of the equation. This attention is like a hypersensitive mouse. I have a mouse, it really is very sensitive. You do a small movement and it can go to moon. This attention is something that does not follow any rules. It doesn't believe in any rules. It can go to any place. It doesn't need a visa. In 1 second, it is in Dartmouth. Another second, it can be in China, Japan, wherever. It can do time travel. It can go in past. It can go in future. It can walk through fire. It will not be burnt. It can easily walk into black holes and see what is going on there. For attention, nothing is out of bounds. So attention is something which completes us. And for attention, there is nothing we can say it is out of bounds. Now, finally, this equation that I was talking about, the first 2 parts, I mentioned that we call mind. when all these three put together are there, then only I feel we can say that I'm there, I exist, I'm here. What way it can help? Everybody has same amount of time, but some people are able to achieve more or able to do more in less time. So when I talk to students, I know that some people study for just 1 hour, 2 hour, and they can grasp a lot. Some people, they say that, oh, I worked on this for 6 hours and they do not make any progress. And we are living in a world where a lot of people emphasize that we need to multitask. We should be able to do this also. Along with that, we should be able to do that also. And I don't know whether it helps or not, but definitely keeping attention at one place itself is challenging. And if you try to put attention at many places, it becomes even more difficult. First two, everybody has. What makes a big difference is the third one. So key message through this presentation that probably I can give is that as a student or somebody working on some assignment, so if you are doing assignment, be there. So by be there, I mean bring brain, neural networks in action, as well as attention to the task. If you are having fun, you need to be there. If you are listening, you need to be there. If you are doing exercise, if you are working on keeping your body healthy, you need to be there. So the key message of this presentation is that whatever we do, we should be there in person with B and A all together. So I'm going to stop here and thank you very much for patient listening.
Thank you so much, BK, for this very informative and enlightening and at the same time attention-grabbing presentation. Question time.
Let me put my mic on. Yes, thank you very much, BK. And this was very interesting and brought in a number of elements. I made a number of notes. One of the things that I wondered, I like your conclusion, by the way, the end where you focus heavily on attention, which is the one thing in your equation that we have full control of, presumably. Yeah, I'm not sure of that either, but that's the more controllable of the variables in your equation. So that makes a lot of sense in a number of ways. My comments are mostly about the kind of the structure of how you got there and the science behind it. And I'm curious about AI, which I know very little about. I know a great deal about probability and statistics and research methodology, which is my area. A number of things come up. First of all, when you say memory, there are three kinds of memory according to modern psychology, and they're different. And you gave an example of what we call procedural memory, bike riding. The second thing is semantic memory, and that's the kind that's typically tested in the laboratory where you remember, phone numbers or lists of things, and then you repeat it back, and there are lots of variations on how people remember and how long they remember and what kinds of things they remember, et cetera, et cetera. That's all called semantic memory, and it has to do with school learning. That's what we learn in school. We want to remember the dates of the historical events, etc., like that. That's all semantic. But there's a third kind. Ewald Tulving at Toronto University, the great psychologist, theorist, came up with the idea that there's a third kind of memory, and it's different than the other two. And it's called episodic. And it's what makes people human. Because this is the closest thing in memory to feeling, the experience. So episodic memory is these autobiographical things. It's our dreams. It's our imagination. It's the inspirational scientific vision that we have, that Einstein sees the universe and gravity differently than Newton did. And it's, all of these things are episodic. They're episodic. And if you break that word down, it's a story. It's a story. That was an extremely important event in the history of psychology and the study of memory. That is the understanding that there's a special kind of memory that's different than the other kinds. And I wonder if that's recognized when in AI when you do memory studies. That's the first question. Shall I stop there and get your response, or shall I go on? I have another question.
Okay, I can respond probably, and then we can go to the second one. The research that we see in AI-related fields, especially deep learning, there's a lot of focus on that by using the technology, because there's like technology is available and a lot of data are used. And they try to understand how the things work and then try to do that. Your question is about different types of memories and whether researchers are relating to that in some way and try to implement that in their deep learning models, for example. One thing I would say, there has been like several books related to AI. The current stage where we are looking at AI applications that can do one thing in a very good way. Like as humans and the way we work, we can do so many things, but the technology is still not there in terms of the models and research where the same deep learning model can do 10 different things. We are not yet there. So for example, if you look at Alexa or Siri, if you ask a question, it will answer. It will provide answers to that. If you ask Siri, for example, what is deep learning? And it will give you, because it has a huge database, Wikipedia and other things, and it will bring and tell you, okay, this is what is deep learning. But even to that, if I ask the same question slightly differently, if my question to Siri is, Siri, can you throw some light on deep learning? It gets confused. It doesn't understand like what is the meaning of throwing in light. We are able to grasp all those things and so many things. Our neural networks are well trained to handle what is a joke, what is a sarcastic comment, and many other things. But applications that we see today, they are able to do one thing very nicely, and even there they are not perfect yet. Elon Musk, who is the owner of Tesla, he made a statement that AI can be very dangerous to the society, because if it can learn few things on its own. I don't know if you may have seen some article a few years back where we were on the verge of the next world war because the signals that US got in the sky, it saw that there are some missiles coming from Russia, and they were about to hit the button when they realized it is some kind of like the light deflecting in certain way, and it was not really a missile, it was something else. So the system they had was something that misclassified or mispredicted the real thing. It happens with humans also. Sometimes if I'm walking in the dark and I see a snake, but when I see more closely, maybe it is a stick. So our mind also like misclassifies things at times. But to answer your question, we are not yet, probably, who knows, the way technology is going, things can happen in our lifetime. But at least now it may be able to do one thing good, very close, much better than human beings, but it can struggle when you try to go slightly this way or that way, or try to make it do some other things.
Thank you. Good. Yeah. This is more easily stated, but it's actually a deep question, I think. But I'm curious to know about the AI community. Let me call your attention back to one of the diagrams you had. You had a diagram of neurons, and you had, the little cellular things, and you had the lines of connection to the next neuron and next synapse, etc. And so there was very, very nice display of, the kind of the conceptual idea. Now, there is a concept that came across many years ago, and it's much more popular in Europe, in European science, than it is. It never caught on in American science. I mean, it was a very vast and encompassing theory, but it never caught on for example, in psychology, and I don't think in neuropsychology either. But it's this concept of Gestalt. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. The suggestion of this theory is that by looking at the individual neurons and their connections, you cannot predict the total. Okay? Now, that's not exactly true. You can predict some things, based on averages, more of the neurons are going in this direction because of the attention switch, because of a brain injury, it shifts the patterns, etc., in a measurable way. That leads to some, a better prediction. However, there is a truism, I think, that is widely understood, that I guess Ilya Prigogine, the great Nobel Prize winning Belgian physicist, the greatest advocate of this, and this notion that we have collectives of individual things, and when you put them together and they in operation, by looking at the individual things, you cannot predict what they're going to do together. He did studies of traffic, for example, that you can't predict what the individual drivers are going to do, or if you do, great, but that does not predict the traffic flow. The traffic flow has a mind of its own, so to speak. Certainly that's true with the neurons. Is that taken into account in any way in AI? Or does AI just assume that all the neurons are doing the same thing and that it's a random process, it's probability driven, or does it take into account that there are other elements that the whole creates on its own? Difficult. I mean, it's a simple question to ask, but it is difficult to answer. I mean, you have any comments on that?
Yeah, that's a difficult question, and definitely a lot to think about. There's a book, Slow Thinking and Fast Thinking,
Yes,
by one of the Nobel Prize winners.
Daniel Kahneman.
Yeah, fast thinking is you ask somebody what is 2 plus 2, and then you don't need very complicated interactions between the neurons to answer that. It comes like quickly. Even like very deep philosophical questions, especially in India, you ask a child, who are you? And he may say, oh, we are Atma. They may not know what it means, but sometimes you can get that kind of answer, which is like fast. But sometimes when questions or situation is more complicated, it takes time to come up with the answer. But in terms of research that we have in AI or deep learning, especially, a lot of focus is on deep learning because with the help of technology, a lot of data are available. Think of Google, millions and millions of searches every day, and a lot of text data, a lot of image data. So Kalyanda was talking about ChatGPT. That's another AI application which is based on huge amount of data. And the idea is that your question was from existing things, whether they can create something new, just like when in the brain neurons interact and they have stored some memories and all that. But when we dream, dreams are always like it's creating totally new things. So in ChatGPT, just write a question, can you write a song in a Bhojpuri language? And boom, I see a song created by ChatGPT in a Bhojpuri language, which never existed. Or you can ask it to write a very sophisticated essay on some economic topic, and it will generate an essay which has never been written. And it will look very realistic. It is going in that direction. Actually, GPT-3, I could see that it had some limitations, but now they have come out with GPT-4. That is actually, again, a big leap towards creating more original content by artificial intelligence, to the extent that many schools are banning use of this ChatGPT in schools. Otherwise, a teacher asks them to write an essay, and in 1 second, they can create an essay for every student in the class. some schools are going towards banning it. So to answer your question, definitely AI is moving towards creating new things which do not exist. So it does do like 1 plus 1, it has gone beyond like 2. 1 plus 1 is definitely nowadays 11.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you, Jen. Any other question for BK?
Yeah, I was just, it's very interesting that you're talking about, I have another question, but I want to show something that ChatGPT 4, I used recently because I have not used. And I asked ChatGPT what are the 4 favorite students of Balram Singh. And it gave 4 names, but none of them are my students. So, so, and I then my next question, maybe I thought we got confused with some other Balram Singh. So I said, students of Professor Balram Singh at UMass Dartmouth. It gave the names, but none of them have never been my students. So I mean, what by this really just says, it gives you information if you believe it. And the danger is not that somebody gets an essay written. The danger is that people believe in that essay. That's the problem. because that may have some truth in it based on all the data that they have in the online, Google, whatever. But it may have nothing to do with either that what you are thinking. And I think it brings back to what Jerry was talking about, the attention. Even in attention, what attention you are paying to, what attention you are paying, what aspect of attention you are paying to. Like you said that, you were using the phones and this and that, and then you gave that up. Now, okay, at least you are not distracted by that. But since there are infinite aspects of our existence, we exist, you're talking about people being affected, the whatever Jerry was talking about, the whatever is next to you, it affects you. And I do molecular research, and this is where I got some inspiration. In the molecules, what is next to it affects it. And there is a temporal aspect of it, which is infinitesimally small time that we don't even know how to measure it. For example, the molecule, the protein that I work with, we do at femtosecond. Femtosecond is like too tiny thing. To calculate, I have a collaborator from UMass Lowell, Valeri Barskov. I asked him, we have done some movements of certain segments of proteins at femtosecond level. I asked him if we can use this, there are millions of molecules in a cell, can we calculate at femtosecond level what they are doing? Because I like to see whether they are dancing with each other, they are affecting each other. He said there is no way at this point, no, not a single cell. And you mentioned there are 100 billion cells in here. And then each one of them connect to about 1,000 connections. So just imagine this thing. And this is only, we are talking only what GPT can do. What you can do beyond, the yogas, what I understand is that you pay full attention to every damn thing that you can, and like you're talking about, but then the idea is to go beyond the attention. And then what you see. So that is not to say that the machine learning and AI will not get there, but it will never get where ultimate thing is, because even we cannot get there. So that experience is something that just to not to in any way deny, we are getting so much information, so much value out of the phone, the AI, but to believe that that is all that is a problem. If we use it to go to next step, I think that's not a problem, and that will be a good thing to make a progress in our own lives and the life of the society. If you have any comments on it.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Singh. And yeah, I think the whole purpose probably of this presentation was to get thinking in some direction. And some of the questions we sometimes think about and coming together and think together. But definitely AI, as far as AI is concerned, it has a long way to go. And it is, I would say it's not a broad AI today, what we have, it's a narrow AI. And at least if we can pay attention to the important things in life, as a student, as a professor or whatever, if we are in the class physically and our mind is not in the party, or if we are in the party physically and the mind is not somewhere else, like I have to do some assignment, if we focus on the current, probably the neural networks that we create in our brain, probably that will be much healthier, I would say, and we will achieve more in less time.
I mean, while you think of framing your question, let me also mention, which I should have mentioned at the beginning, BK has a very nice website. If you go to his YouTube channel, and it is watched by people in more than 200 countries. So some of these aspects, like how machine learning can be used in, let's say, business and things like that, you can look at his YouTube videos.
So Kalyanji, I wanted to comment that it was a very, very useful way of presentation to answer this question for a lot of people to approach. And the second thing, I want to admit that I did not know this aspect of BK. So, so it's a very pleasant surprise, and
Exactly.
we should try to really use your thoughts and your experiences and your training in this way more.
Thanks.
I have been surprised over the years at how much talent we have in-house.
Yeah.
It's the humility of these people that kind of prevents us from knowing and learning more about them. Let me take this opportunity to ask you a question, and that is, you talked of B plus N plus A. If we focus on this A part, I mean, who is the user of all this, in other words? As Balramji said, I know that sometimes I am very attentive, sometimes I am not. And I know that there are certain techniques, especially in yoga, where you can train your mind to become attentive to whatever task you take up. How can AI approach that, as Balramji said, even beyond the scope of what you can get from the probability of neurons interacting?
Yeah, I think what I had mentioned was in the beginning when I brought up attention, I mentioned that this is what is the secret recipe that probably in my thinking as human beings we have, and AI doesn't. Otherwise, the way technology has come, creating like billions of transistors inside a computer or phone or some tech gadget, and having a huge amount of memory is not impossible. So creating like artificial brain kind of situation is not impossible. But how are they going to bring this part where we are able to, obviously it is impossible to have attention all the time, like 24/7 and throughout the life. That I'm not talking about that kind of attention. I'm talking about attention on important things when we are doing. Even there, it is like difficult. Even there, when I'm speaking, people are listening. And when people are listening, while they hear things coming out of my mouth, those 100 billion neurons are in action. And they are taking those thoughts and running with it, trying to create their own thoughts or some new ideas, or trying to relate to what they have studied in a paper or a book or watched in a documentary. But if especially like important times, if we are able to bring the attention to the task that is important, at least in our mind. So that's something AI, so far, I guess, I don't know how it works. Obviously, it's a huge thing, but the day AI community is able to bring that, they will be able to recreate a human being. I don't think so that's possible, but at least somebody has done that, maybe sitting somewhere, because what we get is a semi-furnished house, and there are, I think, 99% of the things that go inside or happen inside us, we are not aware of it. At least most of the people are not aware of things even that happen inside us. Somebody is controlling that, and how this attention comes. What happens when somebody dies, for example? There is a brain, there may be neurons, they may not be in action, but definitely that person cannot bring attention somehow. So yeah, so I will.
Yeah, very good. And in fact, there is a very famous scripture It's called the Kena Upanishad, and it kind of begins with the statement that, well, what is it that impels us? I mean, what is it that impels the seer to see, the listener to listen, etc., etc.? Very profound question. As you know, we are recording it. So once this session ends and we get the file, we will put it up on our center YouTube channel, and we will give it to BK. He will put it up on his YouTube channel as well. So, and in fact, I saw a comment, somebody who joined in late saying they would like to watch this video later. You will get that opportunity. Very good.
And
With that, thank you so much again. Namaste and goodbye.